You are listening to The Underground Subway with host David Alston, a podcast dedicated to giving you the strategies to live a free and better life. Here is David Alston.
Hi, I'm David Alston, host of the Underground Subway podcast, and I want to thank you for joining us for this wonderful edition of the Underground Subway. I'm excited every time I can speak with you, talk to you, encourage you, push you, and motivate you. As I always say, we are living in a time when we really need to be pushed. We really need that extra boost of encouragement, that extra boost to kind of get us going and just motivate us. As I always let everyone know, I'm proud of who I am and proud of my heritage. I am the third cousin of the great Harriet Tubman, who was the leader of the Underground Railroad. And cousin Harriet led so many people to freedom from slavery. And so in 2022, we're not leading the Underground Railroad, we're leading the Underground Subway. We have modernized it. However, there are a whole lot of people that are still living in chains, living in bonds, living in bondage, living in fear, living in the past pain that they've encountered. And it is our job and our responsibility to share with them through this podcast some strategies and some ideas to kind of get you going. And so every week we come on with a special guest who has experienced what it's like to be in bonds and now have been working through those chains, can turn around and say, this is how you need to be free. Harriet Tubman said this: I would have freed a whole lot of more slaves if they only knew that they were slaves. So many of us are living a life in which we are still in some type of bondage. And I don't know about you, my friends, but I want to be free. I want to experience that spiritual, that emotional, that mental GPS system to find out where I am, where I want to go, how do I need to get there, how long is it going to take me, what route I need to take, and then I'm ready to hit the go button. And when I hit the go button, I'm ready to go. And so to this particular podcast, I am excited beyond measure to have my guest with me. Her name is Hince. And Hince has gone through an awful lot of turmoil, a lot of trauma. When Ann was 19 years old, she woke up one morning to find her mother laying face down dead in the bathroom. And that had to be a traumatic experience. I lost my mother. I lost both my moms, my adopted mom and my biological mom. And so Ann has gone through that traumatic experience, and Ann experienced something that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. It took her 15-minute sessions with a strange technique to remove the charge from that event and to be able to tell the story with no emotion. That's amazing. And we all need that. So please, everyone, help me in welcoming my guest to the Underground Subway, Ann Hince. Thank you so much, Ann, for joining me on this podcast. I'm excited.
Thank you, David. That was a great introduction. I didn't know you were adopted. So the mother that I found dead on my bathroom floor was my adopted mother. Wow. My birth mother is actually still alive across the world. She lives in New Zealand and I live in California. But
okay, wow. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I hear that accent. That sort of sounds like a combo.
It is. It's a mid-Atlantic accent.
There you go. Okay.
Yes. I'm from England originally, but I've lived around the world in multiple different continents. So yeah, wonderful. I moved out to California when I was 21 and have lived here ever since.
And let's get right into it, because your story is so intriguing to me, especially living in a time when a lot of friends and loved ones. Last week, I recently lost one of my little cousins who was more like a brother, raised in the home with me. And that was so painful and shocking because in his 30s, who would have expected that? Tell us about what you went through. And then let's talk about, how did you manage that? Because a lot of us don't know how to really handle grief. We suppress it. There are times in my life when I may hear a song or see something that reminds me of my mother or whatever, and that emotion comes up in which I thought it was over with. Tell us what you went through, and what do you think we need to do to be better when it comes down to dealing with traumatic experiences?
Well, you're right. We absolutely do suppress it. And I suppressed all of my traumas. That the one when I was 19 was kind of the culmination of many over my childhood years, including both parents being alcoholics and having anger issues. So yeah, I just suppressed it. Like that's the only thing I knew how to do. I didn't know how to do anything else. And I think that's a lot, even what you were talking about with Harriet Tubman, right? People, it's like we're swimming in this water, but we can't see the water. We don't know that we're on a particular path because we're almost programmed into it. So we just carry on in life because we don't know there's anything else. And I didn't know there was anything else. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I actually had a business altercation with a couple of other mothers who were very self-confident, self-assured, authority type women. And they told me, who was this fearful little girl inside, they told me that I had done something wrong. And my mind just spun out of control. It just went over and over and over everything that had happened. And I couldn't let it go. And that's when I realized I don't think this is normal. I don't think normal people react this way so intensely to something that really wasn't that big a deal. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe there's some of my childhood that's still affecting me to this day.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's amazing. I was reading somewhere, maybe you can help with this, about the ability. Do you think that we have the ability to actually control our bodies from within?
Yes, but it does take work.
Okay.
So what happened with me is I went to this doctor's appointment around that time frame, and he recognized how stressed I was because I was more stressed than I should be. I was a stay-at-home mom with two young boys, so it shouldn't have been that bad. But he recognized I was really stressed, and he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what my stress level was, and I said it was an 8. And then he asked me why. And that's when I realized, oh gosh, it was finding my mother when I was 19, which is now 2 decades earlier, because the tears were still so close to the surface, just like you said with your mother, when things would come up. So he used this technique with me that's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping, because we're tapping on certain places in our body, as we're talking through something.
Wow.
In this case, my mother's death, right? So I talked through that experience, and we would tap, and then we'd talk through it again and again. And that lets the emotion dissipate from the nervous system of the body.
Wow.
So that was just the first step. I went home, I learned how to use it, and I started using it every day. And I could see things starting to become peaceful. My mind started to become more peaceful inside, and I wanted more, right? I could tell something was changing, and I really wanted more, and I wanted fast. So I wrote down every emotional memory I could think of from my childhood, and I tapped through, using this technique, EFT, I tapped through one of these events each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night. And then I could tell things were changing. My mind was becoming quiet, which I've never experienced before. I didn't even know that was possible. And I was becoming less reactionary, and just life was changing. Wow. So, at that point I hadn't got to the inside, but it's using words, and it's using memories, and It's using emotions. And then it's the physical tapping that releases the emotions from the body. So it's starting that journey on the inside. That was the first step that I did.
Well, do you meditate any, or are there any benefits to meditation? Do you subscribe to medication? I'm not medication. I'm sorry, meditation.
It's funny how close
that was kind of funny. Do you prescribe to medication? No. Do you subscribe, not prescribe to medication? Do you subscribe to meditation?
I do not meditate personally. I never wanted to. I like to be doing something, and I realized that EFT was actually working at a deeper level.
Gotcha.
It was changing the physical inside the body, whereas meditation is using more the mind. Right. So it is changing things. It is beneficial because when you're meditating, you're actually bringing yourself to peace. So
Right.
that in itself is beneficial. I just found this was working faster, deeper and faster.
Do you believe that we can change the world if all of us decided to do this?
I do. I do,
Okay.
because I think of us as a signal, the whole of us as being a signal. And we're attracting back into our future based on our signal now, right? So if we're sitting in fear or anger, then that's what we're attracting back into our future. But if we change that signal, right? If we tap, if we use one of these techniques and come back to peace, then that's what we're attracting into our future.
Right. I totally understand that. Talk to us a little bit, Anne, about this concept about, I noticed lately, personally, I've been going through a moment in life in which I will listen to a lot of old songs from the 70s and 80s, and my mind began to go back to my childhood. Do you believe that, that's beneficial to me to be reliving the emotions, that peacefulness from my childhood?
Absolutely, it's good to replay peacefulness, but if it's taking you to something with trauma, then you want to be tapping or doing something to release that energy. Because I've realized, right, through going deeper and deeper into my body, I realize it's only the negative that is stored inside the body. Underneath that negative, it's already positive. So all we have to do is work through and release the stored negative.
So the positive is there, but you're saying that the negative covers it.
Absolutely, yes.
Gotcha. Question here that I don't know whether I'm going out into left field or not, but an individual, I'll paint a scenario and maybe you can kind of help us with this. You lay down at night and you want a peaceful sleep, you want to go to sleep, and yet you're sleeping, and yet at the same time, you're not really resting peacefully, because in the back of your mind, and I don't know whether I'm getting into stress levels, when you're really not resting because subconsciously you're thinking, I can't really rest because I've got to get up in the morning. I guess my question is, can stress really affect us in that level?
Oh my goodness, stress affects us so much, but we're just not aware of it.
Right, right.
So if that's happening subconsciously at night, if you can become conscious of it, right? So if you realize that that's what's happening in the night, then you can tap on it before you go to sleep, right? And the tapping is fully accepting whatever it is you're feeling. So if the thought is, I'm not going to rest well because I know I have to get up early, that's the phrase you would use as you're tapping, and you accept that. Once you fully accept that thought, then it releases the stress, and then hopefully you would be able to sleep better.
Do you think that certain types of sounds or what have you will help with that, or?
They could do. I mean, to me, the biggest change was actually going back and looking at my childhood and releasing it, because I went deeper. So that was the first step. The EFT was the first step. Then I became aware of the physical sensations underneath the emotions, and I started to feel them and let them go. And then eventually I could actually put my awareness inside my body. And then I became aware of this deeper level and became aware of how much tension and pain we hold, at least I was holding in my body, that I had no awareness of before. Wow. Right. So we're not aware of how much stress we're holding in our body because it's hidden from us.
Wow. This is, I'm really enjoying this, and I'm going to do something that not do something, I'm going to say something that I have not shared with too many people, but I feel comfortable enough to share it. For years, I went through an emotional state in which I felt as though something happened to me traumatic in my childhood. And yet I could not put my finger on it in the sense of remembering anything bad. But I just have this feeling as though something bad happened. And I kept trying to remember and nothing. And then a few years ago, I found out what it was, that I really was not adopted, that I was abducted. And wow. I guess my question to you is, like you just said, how often do you believe that we can go through traumatic experiences? And it's, of course, at that age, I didn't know, but I just knew something wasn't right. And do we really need to tap into and really trust that inner feeling that we have? I guess some people will call it a gut feeling, but I call it more of an inner feeling.
Right. I mean, the gut feeling is hard because sometimes it's ego and sometimes it's not. So you have to be able to tune into that. But if you had known EFT at the time, then I would have suggested that you would tap using that phrase that I know something happened to me. I know something happened to me. And you keep using that phrase and tapping until the energy of that had dissipated. At that point, the memory might have actually come to you, or it might have just dissipated and you would have gone on with your life. And then perhaps another day it would have just surfaced what the memory was. But since you heard the story, I would then, if it was me, I would go back and tap about everything I know, everything that someone had told me, right? Because you must have heard that from someone.
Yes, because I was actually about 7 months when it happened, but I heard it from my mother before she died. She just told me the whole story. And it's been, when I first heard it, it was just very traumatical to find out that. But
I bet, right? So I would tap through that whole story. I mean, I had somewhat very mildly similar. Like my brother was adopted first, so he was 2 when I came into the family. But before that, there was another little girl that was adopted, and they had her for 6 months, and then the birth mother changed her mind. And then I was adopted, and there was a replacement for her into this family that had just had to give this baby girl back again. So that was a trauma for me. Just the adoption itself is a trauma, and people don't necessarily realize that. But later in life, I found myself being really afraid of leaving home because I was afraid I would never come back again. That was my fear. And it took me a while to realize what was actually going on. And I realized that was because, when I was 6 weeks old, I was handed over for adoption. That the nurse took me away from my mother and from the house, and I never went back again.
Wow.
So when I heard the story of my birth, and being given away, and I had physical therapy for the first 6 weeks of my life as well. So when I heard all those stories, I tapped through the stories that I had heard.
Gotcha.
And that released that. So now I actually love going on journeys and don't even consider the idea that I'm not going to come back again, right? Because I have released that. But if you haven't released it, it's still living inside of you.
Still living it, right? Exactly. Do you find yourself being because I'm talking to you about, I'm talking to you about this, and I met you, and we, through this podcast. And I guess my question is, do you find yourself, because recently I find myself sitting next to, in workshops and at work, people that say, yes, I was adopted. Do you find yourself attracted to like-minded, but people that have gone through similar experiences?
Yes, that's
talk to us about,
is.
And I guess what I'm getting into is and I don't know, we're going into left field again. I hope you guys are really enjoying this like I am, but the law of attraction, being able to attract people. Do we attract? Some people say opposites attract. Some people say you attract like-minded. What are your views on attraction?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe we attract things into our life based on our past, based on the signal that we are programmed with in childhood, right? So that might be trauma, in which case we will end up talking to people about trauma, or we'll hear something on the news or TV about trauma, and we have a little signal inside of us, right? So we tune into that because it's an experience that we have had in the past.
Okay.
So that's the same with all sorts of things. So actually, if you asked all the people that you met, right, during the day, those people that are around you probably have a lot more in common than because we don't generally talk about deep things like that, but they probably do, because we are just attracted to similar people.
Okay. You mentioned we had this signal. What do you refer to when you're talking about the signal?
Okay, I'm thinking in terms of law of attraction. When I started this journey, I really wanted to understand that, because so many people talked about it, but it was never very clear. So I really wanted to understand it. And I feel like I have a good understanding now that we really are programmed in childhood, and we are a signal. So the whole of us is a signal. We're emitting a signal all the time. Every second of every day, we're emitting a signal, and we're attracting back into our future based on the signal. Now, people often talk about our thoughts being the magnet that's attracting into our future, but I've realized that is a small part of it, and it's the whole of us that's a signal. So it's our gender, it's our size, it's our shape, it's our clothes, it's our hair, it is our thoughts. But the biggest part of it that I've realized, because I can go inside and feel this tension, is the tension that we hold inside from that programming in childhood. That is huge, right? When I was able to put my awareness inside my head and feel the forces inside there, they were so incredibly big, huge forces pulling my bones out of alignment that I had no idea lived inside of me. So those have released over time, right? Because I can put my awareness on them and release them. And the whole bone structure of my skull has changed.
Wait a minute. So you're saying that what I go through in life emotionally can have a physical effect on us?
Yeah, I believe the tension is stored in the connective tissue of the body.
Wow.
But we're not aware of it
Wow.
until we are.
Wow. That's amazing. You know, I mean, we do know that, you know, I'm sure everyone believes that, you know, stress can cause you to, can cause some, but I mean, the actual restructure your bones.
Yeah, it is stored as dis-ease inside the body.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, it's a
well, yeah, I thought it was too. I didn't know, you know, the early steps, the early years that I was doing the tapping, I didn't know it was really affecting my physical body. It wasn't until I was able to put my awareness inside and that could actually feel the bones shift. And actually had the x-rays taken last year compared to 2013 and actually see the physical changes in the skulls and the bones. That's when I really realized, oh my goodness, we are so powerful.
We are. Wow. You know, and I'm a firm believer in, you know, in positive thinking and speaking positively to gain an effect in your life. But I mean, to actually hear that, how long do you think if I always share with most of my guests that I'm from Philadelphia, and there's a movie called Philadelphia, and Denzel Washington and Tom Hanks, and Denzel is an attorney, and he asked one of the witnesses on the witness stand. He said, "Look, explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old." So I'm going to ask you this, and explain to me like I'm a 6-year-old. If I start tapping today, how long will it take for me to see results? Because, you know, we live in a society where we call it the microwave society. I want to see it right away.
Right. Well, it kind of depends. I started in my late 30s, right? So I'm 55 now. So, you know, but I've got to the place where I can put my awareness inside my bones and release tension there. However, that first day when I went to that doctor's appointment, I came home, I learned how to use EFT because it's available for free online. And I had a cat at home, a 17-year-old cat who needed to have a daily saline shot. His kidneys were starting to fail. So the first time I gave him a shot, my hand was shaking so much. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it every day. I was just too afraid of doing it. So I tapped on it. I tapped for maybe half an hour about my hand shaking, about my fear of hurting him, and about all the memories I had had from all the injections from living around the world. And the next day, the needle just slid right in. All that fear that had been living inside of me the day before had just gone. So that was pretty fast for something that was fairly small.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely going to, I'm going to tap and tap and tap and tap.
Now, there's a couple of things about EFT, right? It's deceptively simple, right? It doesn't look like it's doing much.
Okay.
But it really is. And over time, it's been around maybe 20, 25 years. Over time, people have moved it more towards the positive, but it's only the negative that's stored in the body. And that's where EFT is so powerful. You're just finding your truth, right? It's whether you hate something, whether you're frustrated or angry or whatever it is, you're finding your truth and tapping on it until the energy has gone. You don't need to go to the positive. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're looking for things online. I do have a demonstration of EFT on my YouTube channel where I talk through all the details of it.
Okay,
so
well, we're definitely going to
start there.
We're going to post that link in the description of this podcast so everyone can go to it. But my question is, you said people are going to the positive. Why would I? What is the benefit of me? You know, I can see if I have so much negativity inside of me, I want to tap and get rid of that. What is the benefit of saying I'm going to the positive? It's already positive. It's already there.
Well, I agree with you. But a lot of people don't know that, and they try and they think they're going to try and store the positive in the body. But you know, there are some benefits of tapping on the positive, only in that as you tap on the positive, it actually finds the resistance that you have to that phrase, right? If you're trying to say I'm wealthy, but you're clearly not, right? You'll have some resistance to that phrase, I'm really wealthy. So it will work on that resistance. It's just not nearly as powerful as tapping on I'm not wealthy. Because that's the current belief.
Right. What are some other examples of why we should tap? What are some things that we need to tap? We know we're dealing with grief. What are some other things that someone may say, well, I need to really do this?
Well, we are so divided, right? These days, there's so much going on. There's
definitely.
You know, school shootings, there's wars, there's all sorts of things we're hearing about. And sometimes people forget that that is part of our life too, right? It's not just our little bubble that we live in with our family and our work. We can actually change how we feel about collective things like war or school shootings, right? We can tap on those emotions that we're feeling around politicians. We can tap about those emotions and bring ourselves back to peace, because when we're in peace, that's the signal we're emitting and attracting back. So our lives change. It's really hard to believe until you actually experience it. I actually was on the phone with someone the other day, and she called me up and said, you know, I'm feeling a calmness now that she had never felt before in her life. And she didn't know it existed before, right? So she actually had to do the tapping and get through. I think she's been doing it less than a month at this point. So she had to get through that time period and release some of the emotions in order to get to this place of calm.
I found out that my father, my biological father, he had a lot of heart issues, and he had so many special heart treatments and heart incidents that he was actually written about in the New York Times. And his seventh heart incident, which was a major heart attack, took him out of the world at the age of 37. He was 37 when he had a major heart attack. And my sister died in 2004 after having 2 transplants. My brother died at the age of 50 after having a massive stroke and a massive heart attack and a stroke. So when I look at my family history, I have a lot of heart condition. I work out, I exercise, I lift weights, I eat as well as I can. You know how that goes. But my point is, for those that are listening that are in their 50s and 60s, the stress and the fear of death could be stressful. Will tapping sort of relieve that? I'm not, quote unquote, I'm not afraid to die type of thing.
Or I am afraid to die.
Oh, so you wouldn't say I'm not afraid. You would say I am afraid.
Right. You say your truth, right? So
Got
yes,
you.
I would,
Okay.
I would tap on I'm afraid to die. But in your circumstance, I would tap on everything that happened with your sister, everything that happened with your brother. If you have that story from the New York Times about your dad, I would read it and tap while I was reading it, and then read it again, right? One of the other thing with EFT is you do it again.
Got you. Okay.
No emotion left. So when you get to the place that you can read through that story and you're just reading a story, right? You don't have any emotional attachment to it anymore. At that point, you know it's not affecting you anymore.
Wow, that is wonderful. Well, I told you earlier that time will fly when you're having fun, and this time has flown by so fast. And I have gained so much information and knowledge. We only have about 2 or 3 minutes left. Tell us how we can get in touch with you or see some of the things that you're doing, and tell us a little bit more where we can find more information about EFT in the couple minutes we have left.
Sure. I have a website, hince.com, and you can see the x-rays on there, so you can see what this work will do. And I have a YouTube channel, so just look up my name, Ann Hince, and there's a video on there about EFT and one about feeling your feelings, which was the second step that I did. I also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, and my book, A Pathway to Insight, describes all of this. It goes through all the steps that I went through, and I would love other people to do this work too, because as I said, I think we can change the world.
Well, Ann, thank you so much for joining me as a guest. I had no idea. I knew it was going to be great, but I had no idea it was going to be this great. And this information will help free so many people. Thank you again. And hopefully we can get together and do this again in the future.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, everyone, time really does fly when we're having fun. And I have enjoyed this interview with Ann Hince. Go to her website, look her up on Facebook, social media, YouTube, get the book, check out EFT. I know I'm going to do it, because anything that I can do, one of the things that Ann said that really stuck with me is all of us do this, we can change the world. We can make the world a better place. And we do it one person. There's an old adage that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And the journey of making this world a better place begins with you, my friends. It begins with me. And we need to take the information. I don't believe that things just happen I believe things happen for a purpose and for a reason. I believe there are connections that are made for a reason and for a purpose. And this connection with Ann Hince was made for a purpose. And I'm excited. I'm going to do EFT tonight. I'm going to start tonight. Well, thank you for listening to the Underground Subway. I'm David Austin, your host. I've enjoyed it. We'll join you again next week with a different guest, and we're going to just keep making the world a better place. But before we end this podcast, I want to challenge you, as I always do, before you go to bed tonight, before you close your eyes, before you rest tonight, after you've done all that you have to do to end your day, I want to challenge you to find a mirror, look yourself in the eyes, and ask yourself this question. Today, did I do something to make the world a better place? Did I do something to work toward my purpose in life? Or did I just waste another day? We'll see you next time, right here on the Underground Subway.